nothing else. It's disgraceful.
Order. Order. Call the honourable member for Solomon.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I rise to speak on this a matter of public importance. I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that the opposition is so out of touch and so out of sync with the Australian community and the issues that are facing the country that it has nothing to offer except for distractions like this so-called MPI. So trying to give themselves some relevance. I agree with the Assistant Minister for Defence, who he says you can't trust Labor, and I agree with him. You can't trust Labor, and Labor do not give a ship about defence. Not one ship, Mr Deputy Speaker. In 6 years, Labor didn't give one ship. It's absolutely disgraceful. Meanwhile, the coalition continues to do its best to turn around the mess of 6 years of Labor. Every single day, the Turnbull government is actually out there growing the economy, Mr Deputy Speaker, developing the foundations of the country for the future, crafting the building blocks that will drive growth and prosperity for every Australian man, woman and child for the generations to come. More than $1 billion into innovation, about $70 billion into schools, $54 billion into higher education, $13 billion into skills, $9 billion into science and research. That's the story of this government that is committed to getting the country back on track and stabilising the future. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, we saw another example of that today with the release of the 2016 Defence White Paper. While the members opposite sat there and whinging and carping, this government has released a generational plan, a comprehensive and responsible long-term blueprint that will safeguard Australia's national security and will bring with it considerable economic, educational and innovative spin-offs that will drive growth and prosperity. And jobs is right. That's exactly right, the Assistant Minister. And for my electorate of Solomon, the White Paper is a mighty document. This represents decades of government expenditure, billions of dollars in the area of defence alone. It will mean education and training opportunities for kids in Darwin and Palmerston, and indeed the rest of the Northern Territory. It will be a bulwark for small business, and as they plan for the future, it will be jobs for mums and dads. With only 5 minutes time limit, I won't be able to outline all the list of benefits that the Northern Territory will receive, but I'd like to get on record a few. We're going to get around $70 million in additional investment will be spent updating facilities at Robinson Barracks near my hometown of Palmerston in the next 10 years. In the decades of 2025 to 2036, additional investment for up to $800 million will be made for facilities at Robinson Barracks. Around $1.2 billion will be invested in infrastructure upgrades at HMAS Coonawarra and Larrakia Barracks in the decades of 2025 to 2026, with an additional investment of around $2.1 billion. I say again, $2.1 billion towards future long-term facilities requirements in the decades between 2025 and 2036. Investments of around $200 million to airfields and facilities at RAF Base Darwin over the decades 2025 to 2026. Around $5.6 billion in the decade between 2025 and 2036 to enhance airbase capacity in the Northern Territory. Significant investments in new infrastructure and facilities over the next 10 years to support the ADF's strike and air combat capabilities. This includes upgrades to RAF Base Tyndall to support the introduction of the Joint Strike Fighter. Bradshaw Field Training Area will be upgraded to support our land force capabilities, representing an investment of around $20 million in the next 10 years and a further $350 million in the following decade. Defence information networks will be upgraded to provide the capability to store, manage and process large amounts of intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance data. Intelligence capability enhancements will support existing intelligence capabilities based in the Territory. This government will also upgrade and enhance the Jindalee Operation radar network over the next 2 decades, including facilities near Alice Springs. Mr Deputy Speaker, this is just a snapshot of how the Northern Territory will benefit from the Defence White Paper plan that we announced today. It's small to medium enterprises like RGM in Holtz, just outside of Palmerston and only 15 minutes out of Darwin CBDs, that will stand to benefit from Australia's defence security plan. This is how the Turnbull government is going to continue to build the Australian economy, despite the efforts of those opposite.
Order. Call the honourable member